In today's generation, we're often conflicted with opinions regarding self-defense and whether we should really take up a firearm. Should we? Should we, sometime, when is the proper time? Should we, defend ourselves in certain situations? What is the proper situation? Is it even biblical? Is it right by God? Does God, believe these things are okay? What does the word say? And what does religion say? You see, religion teaches a certain way of how we should believe, how we should think. And they use a lot of verses out of context, and sometimes they may be in context. But with all the confliction of politicians and religions and both sides always fighting back, you know, conservatives and liberals and Republicans and Democrats, and so often people are fighting against what is truth. Well, should we bear arms? Is it biblical? Well, what is right? Well, let's break it down. I'm going to get directly into this right now. And, we see, there's a difference between murder and killing. Murder was basically a foul intent to kill or murder somebody else. It's basically hatred. It's strife. It's bitterness. It's, malice. It's hatred. It's wanting to get back at your neighbor. Some people have murder in their hearts because they can't forgive their neighbor and they want harm to come to their neighbor rather than just forgiving one another and letting it go. You see, murder and killing is different. Cain and Abel is a fine example. We see that Cain wanted to kill Abel because he was jealous. He was jealous because the sacrifice that Abel offered was more righteous than Cain. And Cain, what he offered was displeasing to God. Cain's heart was not right in the sight of God. And, God's seen that there was jealousy. He's seen there was jealousy, there was bitterness, there was strife, there was hatred, there was murder, there was malice. All these things were built up inside before he actually committed the act. Killing was different. Killing was something you did in rather self-defense. I'm going to break it down and show you in the Bible in ways, in the Jewish perspective, and even deeper than that. It's this perspective of God. You see, I'm going to break it down to understand what killing actually is. Killing was an accidental. The 12 tribes were set up. It was to basically, even Deuteronomy 19:4 was based on that, to basically, as long as there was no malice or afterthought. If you had no malice or afterthought, malice was basically premeditation to kill somebody, or anger to kill somebody, hatred to kill somebody. You see, the 12 tribes were set up to protect people. They even in war or that accidentally killed somebody, or in self-defense, these 12 tribes were set up by God, so these people had protection. But if they had any afterthought means that if you still withhold that hatred towards that person in your heart, you carry that with you. You just, you're still thinking about it, still thinking about it. You're glad that harm came to that person. You wanted harm to come. You see, afterthought is unforgiveness. And, malice is just a foul intent to do harm to your neighbor. You premeditate these things. And that's what exactly murder is. Killing was accidental. There was no laws to say if somebody accidentally fell off a ladder and hit their head on a rock and died. Well, they would automatically assume you killed the person, you murdered them. And so there was no safe haven during those times, especially in a lot of the pagan nations, like Egypt. They just killed you. They just put you to death if you killed anybody. That's just the way it was, without a fair trial. And you see, the thing is, capital punishment was, it was supposed to be capital punishment. It was a law of God. It was to be upheld by the governments, which was Israel, in Israel during the time. But you see, I'm going to break down some things. And Peter, we see that he said, and all those who take up the sword will die by the sword. But what was he saying? Yeshua, Jesus, right there said he could call the angels and the legions to come in on his defense. But how would the scriptures be fulfilled? How would the word and the law be fulfilled? How would it be fulfilled? Because here's the thing. Peter say, oh, no, he was just trying to strike his ear, No, Peter was trained in how to use a weapon. A sword back then was the same thing as a gun, a firearm today. And he was trying to take off his head. He's trying to cut his neck and cut off his head. And you're like, wow, how is that possible? You see, he cut off his ear. He missed. And God said, stop. Yeshua, Jesus said, stop. That's what he said. He's like, those who kill by the sword will die by the sword. What did he mean by that? He's saying right there, he would have been dead by the sword right there if he used the sword. He would have been put to death. And so how would Yeshua Jesus go to the cross? How would Peter be used to spread the gospel to the nations and all the people? And you see, we have to think about these things. And when he said, you know, now I tell you to pick up a sword. He tells you, you know, but now I tell you, if you don't have a money bag, that you pick up a sword, right? You go and buy a sword. He in Luke 22:36. But now let the one who has money bag take it, and let the one who has no sword buy one. So what was going on? They were going into the Gentile nations who knew no law. They're lawless. So they told you to pick up a sword because you're going to have, you know, people that are trying to kill you. Now, what's the difference? Why would Paul allow people to beat him, whip him, and stone him and things like this? You have to understand, he says that if let those that persecute you in my name will be blessed. And, you know, there's a difference. Just like in these church shootings, you're seeing these synagogue shootings. These people, you aren't just to sit there and just let them walk up in there. You see what I'm saying? But in the same sense, those are persecuting you in your name. There's been times I had spoken things to females and other men, and they wanted to fight. I had a woman slap me. You see, I don't sit there and fight back. Why? Because I'm speaking the Bible, the Word of God, the truth of God, and the gospel of Yeshua. And when somebody hits you or hurts you or persecutes you in his name, take that as a blessing. But you see, some nations you go and they just want to kill you just because you're in their territory. Some cities do that. You're in their block. They're in their hood. Some people just do that. Some people just, they're controlled by demons. We deal with spiritual forces and not by flesh. And Satan will control people to want to kill you. In fact, he would say, well, go kill that person. Okay, they'll have an anger in their heart to go murder you. You see what I'm saying? So that's what happens in these churches. And, you know, you're going to a lot of nations where people are abusing women and raping women. They're neglecting women. They have anti-Semitism in their hearts. They want to kill the Jews. They want to kill the Christians. They hate God. So what do? They're just going to walk into churches or a synagogue and shoot you up. Kill you. Kill as many people as you can. So you just you're just going to let them kill everybody in your synagogue, in your congregation, your church? Absolutely not. In fact, you know, there's a lot of biblical thesis to reveal why you're to defend yourselves. You see, in Nehemiah 14:17-23, the people wanted to kill them for restoring the temple, for building the temple. But they took up their weapons. They took up their sword. You see, in Esther 9-15, the king permitted by the two letters to put the Jews to death. What happened in war? Jews fought back. In 9/11, we see in Esther 9:11, they protected themselves using the sword. Yeshua Jesus said to get a sword. Now, now I'm going to break this down. Please bear with me. People often take this, even use the sword, and say, oh, that's the Bible. No, the sword, yes, is reference to a Bible, but in this context, it's an actual sword. It can be a firearm in modern days. Back then, they had swords. Today is firearms. People say, but they don't hold high capacity. Stop listening to the news. Stop listening to people in the media. Listen, doesn't matter. There's people that killed just by a jawbone from I forgot what animal, but a jawbone was used to kill. You know, Samson killed tons of people just by using a weapon, a bone. People were killed just by rocks. People were killed by, you know, slings and swords. It's just thousands just killed by one man. You know, they did it a whole lot more quicker than a firearm. So it's not even about a firearm issue. It's a heart issue. So listen to me. Let's break it down. You see, he says, they protect themselves using the sword. And, you know, in the same way, we're to protect others and protect the people in the temple. But in the same sense, there is people out there, conservatives, and this is what I'm talking about. Also, that says in Proverbs 24:1-34, you know, in the whole chapter, he says, do not envy evildoers, nor desire to be with them. For their hearts desire violence, and their lips talk trouble. And you notice these people that have little groups, and they just can't wait for the falling of the nation, for it to collapse, so they can just go out and yield their weapons, and you know, they're plotting to having militias in order to fight these people. You see what I'm saying? This is not of God. And any people that have these, I'm telling you, a lot of those that are just big gun wielding supporters, that are just insane. All they want to do, they have murder in their hearts. They have murder on their lips. They speak of it. And they don't have any compassion. They have no mercy. They just want to put anything evil to death. And that's exactly the way it was with anybody that was lawless, that has no love of God. And, it's not, you don't just pick up your firearm and want to kill somebody. That's not what you do. You don't just wake up and say, well, I just can't wait to kill somebody. Those people that you see open carrying with the guns on their hips. Okay, I'm not against open carrying, but listen to me. It's stupidity how a majority of these people are same ones with the bumper stickers on the back of their trucks and their windows, and all they want to talk about is firearms, 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 and they think they're bigger and badder than everybody else for wielding these firearms. It's not right. It's not right. And they think they're just waiting to kill somebody. They're just ready to do it. First of all, if you have a firearm, if you love God, you don't go out and just, I'm ready to kill somebody. Absolutely not. That's murder. You're walking around with murder because you have unforgiveness. You might have been abused as a child. I don't know what it might have been. You might have seen a lot of hatred when you're in the military. You've seen a lot of violence by these different groups. Well, let me tell you something. Don't just believe what you're seeing in the military, because both sides are at fault. I don't care who it is. And, again, Israel is as obligated. They're at right to defend themselves. But both sides, yes, there's both sides. Palestinians and Israel, those in Israel that are both at fault. They both commit injustice, and both are fighting for, different reasons. And yes, there's also a different side that says, well, yeah, Israel doesn't have a right to defend themselves. They should just put down the missile defense system, get rid of it. Some people wanted them to get rid of it. Some leaders in America wanted to get rid of it. And around the world, the United Nations decided to get rid of it. So what? So you can have the terrorists backed by Iran come in here, by Hamas, and supporting the Palestinian regimes, are putting the women and the children into slavery and forcing them to fight or basically defend their weapons while they're burying their weapons underground in the schools and homes, and using these women and babies and children that even admitted to it to protect their weapons so that Israel will not shoot weapons back. You see the issue? They are using them as human shields, and that's exactly what's going on. And anybody that says, well, he says to defend the poor, the afflicted. He says, he says, rescue the weak and the needy, deliver them from the hand of the wicked in Psalm 82:4. So in the same sense, we are to rescue those that are being afflicted. And no, you don't premeditate to go kill somebody. I'm talking about war here, guys. And a time will come when Yeshua Jesus returns, he will rescue all, and all war will be put to silence. There will be no more war. But you have to understand, when he comes back, Revelation says there is even going to be war. But I'm talking about these things. Israel has a right to defend itself, just as you do. If you say they don't have the right to defend themselves, well, go take off your door off your hinges and say, gun-free zone and welcome all people. All are loved. Well, tell me how well that goes. I mean, you're certainly most likely rape, murder, theft. Who knows what's going to happen. Children getting taken into sex slave, all against God's laws. In Exodus 22:2-3, it says, if anybody a thief breaks into your home at night, and and you kill them, kill them, and give a blow to them, and they die, you're not obligated. You're not at sin. There's no wrongdoing. And that in most of America, you're going to see that there's something called the castle law in most states, and that's based off of Exodus 22:2. And, some might say, but, what do you mean? You say you have heard in Matthew 5:39-39, you have heard an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. He says, but do not resist the one who is evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him on the other also. What is he saying? He's giving a reference off of Exodus 21:24-25. And what is he saying there? Well, first of all, back then, there was a certain cost. And so if somebody basically humiliated you, they would punch you on your cheek or a slap. Different things had a different price. And he's basically saying, don't take those people to court. Don't try to repay them back. That's what he says. Don't repay. Don't repay. Do not resist an evil one. He's like, don't repay evil for evil. What is he saying? Don't take them to court. And that's what a lot of people are doing, taking them to court. He's like, in fact, let them have it. You see, you're going to heap coals on the heads of those that, that are basically persecuting you in his name. And you see, if you're speaking of Yeshua or Jesus, what has happened? They beat Yeshua. They beat Jesus. In fact, they did it to Paul. And what do? Turn his left cheek, turn his right cheek. You see, there's a difference. There's a difference. And hear me out. There's a difference between self-defense, and listen to me very carefully, and defending those that are being persecuted and delivering those out of the weak and the needy, those that are oppressed. And, yes, there's ministries out there, there's organizations out there that go to other nations and they defend these people. That's why a lot of organizations are defending in humanitarian efforts in order to help those sex trafficked and the orphans and the widows, and help support these people that are trying to help these people and deliver them out of the hands of those trying to oppress those people. You see, if you are being persecuted in Jesus' name, Yeshua's name, for proclaiming the gospel, why fight back? Why? You see, there's a difference. Now, like I said, you may be walking through a city and somebody comes right up to you and holds a gun to your head. Well, you're going to sit there and just let them do it? Absolutely not. There's a time and a place for everything. There's a time for war. There's a time for peace. And, if you're speaking the name of Yeshua, Jesus, and, somebody wants to persecute you, let them. What's it going to take for them to just slap you on the cheek and just go another one? I mean, do you have to really fight back? But in the same sense, no, I'm saying, if you see somebody in the middle of a store and they're holding up a gun to a clerk's head, you're going to let them do it? Absolutely not. If somebody's coming in with a firearm in the middle of a movie theater, in a church, in a mall, a store, a Walmart, whatever it might be, you're going to let them do it? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. They already made up their choice. They're trying to take a human life. You're not repaying an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. No, they're already trying to take every eye and every tooth. So you wipe out that eye and that tooth, and you protect those people. Deliver them from the weak and the needy, and deliver them from the hand of the wicked. So you are to protect yourself and others. This is what we are to do. And listen to me. And he says, Ezekiel 33, he says, as a watchman sees a sword and fails to warn, he will require the blood from the watchman's hand. And if you are not warning those and trying to protect those, he's going to require the blood on your hands, because you watched it happen. You watched these people just murder others in his name. Yeah, or not in his name, but just kill the devil's name. You just let people kill people. The thing is, you're to warn people. You are to deliver people from sin, deliver people from wickedness, deliver people from those that are trying to kill and oppress your others. And what's worse? That murderer trying to kill 50 people, or killing the murderer before he kills 50 people? Think about it. There's people today that say, well, wait a second, brother. Why did he have to kill that person that came to shoot up a church? Why couldn't they just pray? Tell me something. When somebody's running through a church, open firing already, you're going to sit there and pray? Don't. Please don't use this humanistic ideology. This is foolishness. And it's a very fact that everybody just wants to love, love, love. But, yes, we love. But you don't go out there and you want to kill your neighbors. Listen, when you see somebody, that is raping another woman, you see these things going on, and you just sit there like, you're going to feel an anger, yes, which is okay. But the thing is, you should have more of a righteous anger to protect those people being harmed. Now, I'm not telling you, don't go out there and start shooting people. I'm not saying that. But listen, you protect people, meaning you should have compassion with people, and you shouldn't plot violence in your heart. I'm just saying, premeditating it. That's why there's some people that think they're doing the work of God. Meanwhile, they go into these churches or these places, or they go and kill somebody and think that's the work of God. Listen, you don't go seeking it. It will come to you. The same way, there's people that in other countries, they're fighting for these women. They're fighting for these children. the orphans that are just being murdered by Muslims. And you have to you deliver them from the hand of the wicked. And in fact, these people will come after them because guess what? You're on their territory. You're trying to deliver these people, these women, these children, the innocent ones, out of the hand of the wicked, and they don't want it. Why? Because you might be Christian, you might be Jewish, and they don't want your God to win, so they're going to defend Allah. You see, I'm just saying an example of what's going on across the world and what true defense is. Again, if somebody comes into your home, you are free, and you don't recognize the person, this person's breaking in, you're obligated to kill them. Somebody's trying to rape you, you're obligated to kill them. It even says that in the Torah that, basically, how do you know a difference between rape? It wasn't just, oh yeah, a man is able to rape a woman. Absolutely not. That's not what the Torah says. He says if somebody basically, if somebody's in the woods or in the field, whatever, and you don't hear the screams of the woman, then basically that woman consented to sex. It's not rape. But if you heard the screams, meaning if the woman cried out and screamed, then basically the man would be put to death. So in the same sense, it's the same thing. No, it's not eye for an eye. It's not tooth for a tooth. Eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth is meaning, basically an evil one that's trying to basically, persecute you in Jesus Yeshua's name. Now, I also, understand this. There's some in other Muslim countries and Hindus that will rape little girls and women because they believe in Yeshua Jesus. It's basically why people rape. It's out of anger. It's hatred. They have something built up in their heart and it's a desire for control and power. So do it out of malicious behavior. Does this make sense? So, you're not to just, let them have an eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth while raping you. Absolutely not. Or kill the rest of your family. Absolutely not. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth had to do with compensation. Meaning, say somebody slapped you on the cheek to try to humiliate you. You weren't trying to seek more compensation. They had nothing to do with, basically self-defense at all. It had to do is there's a certain price when people would slap you on the cheek or punch you. If it was open fist, a closed fist, whatever it might have been. And he says that's why give your other cheek, meaning you let them have the other compensation as well. That's what that really means. Now, that's why he says turn to him another and give one also. Has nothing to do with defending yourselves. Otherwise, it's hypocritical. Buy a sword. Why would he say buy a sword? You see, he in Numbers 31:3 he says arm men from among you for war. And war was a prominent thing. It always was, and it still is today. As long as there's different gods involved, and as religion involved, as long as there's money and power and control involved, there's always going to be war until Yeshua Jesus comes back. Then there'll be one law, one Torah, one theocratic government, and that's it. There's no other way. You see, in Genesis 9:5-6, he says, whoever sheds blood of a man, by man shall his blood be shed, for God made man in his image. What is he saying? Is that hypocritical? Listen, he says the blood of a man is precious, and he's made in the image of God. We should have no desire to kill anybody at all. And you don't go out looking for it. You don't premeditate. You don't have it in your heart. But listen, whoever sheds the blood of a man, by man shall his blood be shed. What he was meaning there is what Cain and Abel did. They shed human blood. And it was basically meaning maliciously, like you were doing it out of hatred. And it wasn't out, you don't want a desire to take anybody's life or lifeblood and smear their blood all over. No way. Peace always if you can. But listen to me. A man's blood that is shed, your blood is basically meaning if you have anger or hatred in your heart, your blood is their blood is on your hands, meaning God will judge you on account of that. And that's what that means. It has nothing to do with self-defense. It has something to do with murder and hatred. You see, people often see, well, Moses, what did he murder? Well, it says that he looked both ways and he hid the bodies in sand. Well, Was it really murder? You see, the thing is, when you grow up in an area, you see the oppression, you begin to see the ways of life, the hatred, the mistreatment. And he's seen that there's brothers and sisters, they're basically being abused and beat and whipped and things like that. So what happened? He was filled with like anger, and he thought he was helping the Israelites. And you know what happened the next day? He's seen the Hebrews and quarreling when Moses tried to break it up. And in fact, there was basically somebody else punching somebody else and fighting somebody else, another brother fighting another. And what did he say? He tried to break it up, and he said, "What? Who are you, chief and judge over us?" You see, he was they're mad. They're mad. And he was mad, like, who made you chief and judge over us? Because they were saying that they're following Pharaoh. And right there, Moses, what did he do? He ran. Because he realized, well, he thought he was doing a good deed and helping, but he realized that they don't know the word of God. They don't know the law. In fact, they're just like, didn't care. He knew, okay, then they're supporting Pharaoh. Meanwhile, they're being hypocrites and doing the same thing that the fellow Israel or Egyptians were doing. So what do? Moses shared the burdens of others. You can learn that from him. He shared the burdens of others. And he left the luxury. He left the power and authority of where he was at. And he lived in the middle of a desert. And, we can see in Dathan in number 16 that there was a revolt against Moses. And even then, people mumbled and complained and betrayed Moses often. So we see that because even in that issue right there, it showed that they had rebellion. They wanted the ways. That's what they're saying. Now, let us go back to Egypt. Because when we were in Egypt, we had this and that. And that, see, they didn't even care to follow in the right ways of God. They didn't care. They wanted to go back. And you see, was there a law before Moses? Well, Moses was raised up by, Egyptians. So how you might be saying, well, how are you saying he knows the law? Well, listen, Abraham, he obeyed God in Genesis, 26:5. Abraham obeyed God, and he was found righteous in the eyes of God. And Abimelech and Sarah in Genesis 23, we see that God warned Abimelech in a dream about adultery, and that's how he came and knew and told Abraham, "Look, you didn't tell me you were married. Why would you bring such evil upon us?" You see, because he was afraid of the king. You see, Miriam and Aaron were sisters of Moses. And in fact, the same way Moses' mother actually was called by the daughter of Pharaoh to nurse Moses. She would have taught them the ways of God as well. And we know that they knew there's laws even before it. Even in Genesis, we see the Ten Commandments. We see different laws. We see the sacrificial laws. Job existed before Moses. And we see that Moses even knew a law. Even with the ark and Noah knew a law. How do you know to sacrifice animals? How do you know to bring, 7 clean animals and 1 unclean, a pair of unclean? You see, 7 pairs of clean animals and 1 pair of unclean. So how did he know that? Well, you see, they put Moses in an ark. The mother put him in an ark, and he was found like they say a basket. It was an ark. And in the same way, we see an ark built in the desert, held the commandments, the laws. Noah's ark was an ark. It was a covenant. It was his laws. But I won't break that down right now. But you see, in Romans 12:17, he says, "Repay no one with evil, for vengeance is mine." So you shouldn't want to repay anybody with evil. Self-defense, again, is biblical. Repaying people with vengeance, trying to get back at them, wishing evil and bad things to come upon them, that's murder in your heart. No, you see, Paul said in Romans 12:18, if possible, live at peace with all. And if possible, we are to live at peace with all. And, we're not to try to seek to kill anybody, and, defending those that are, just like in war, they defended themselves. Not always did they have weapons. Sometimes God delivered them out of it. But we are to defend others in the name of God, meaning, again, I'm not telling you to go seeking to kill anybody. Again, that's murder. If you're just waiting to kill somebody, you shouldn't have a desire to want to kill somebody. Even after you kill somebody, you should be like, oh, wow, this really stinks, because you're taking a life of somebody. You just rather that person come to repentance and follow God's ways and humble themselves and change, and not, not pick up their weapon and yield it and use it against anybody. Absolutely not. And, it should bring a sadness in your heart that these people actually want to do this. But in the same sense, we must protect each other, guys. And the time is coming, Jews and Christians, we're going to be persecuted even more and more to true believers. And it's happening. There's so many attacks on synagogues and Jewish synagogues in the past 2 months. Of 2019, it's unbelievable. And it's going to keep growing. And, Christian churches being shot up. This is something that used to happen more in foreign countries rather than in America. But we're seeing that, there's a lot of churches that only want to bear firearms. Now they're starting to hire security that bears them. And that's the proper way. It's the proper way. And, anybody that says we don't need guns is humanistic. They have fallen in the liberal agenda. They do not want the ways of God. They don't know the true Yeshua Jesus. They don't understand what it means to love your brothers and sisters. And if you love your brothers and sisters, you see, you're going to protect others. But these leaders that are trying to do away with these things are not trying to protect the people. They're following after laws of man rather than the laws of God. And tell me where it ever says in the Bible to basically just get rid of your weapons. Yes, it says time will come when they'll beat your plowshares, their spears, and beat it to basically file it down, to basically get rid of it. That's the time Yeshua Jesus comes back. A time will come where there will be no more war. He's saying they'll get rid of those things, and they'll not have to fight each other. And that's what Yeshua Jesus, he was revealing what is going to be like in the Messianic era when he arrived. But the time is coming when there's going to be war. It even says it in Revelation, how there is war. That's why there was blood, all the way up to horses, mouth for miles and miles. And there's going to be a big bloodbath and war. And, you shouldn't want to seek to, kill these people. Yeshua Jesus is going to come back and he's going to take over. But your heart should be on defending the weak, the widows, the poor, the oppressed, and the orphans, helping those, protecting others, and not seeking to kill the people. God, the vengeance is his. And, vengeance is trying to take it in your own hands in order to seek out the blood of another. If the blood comes into your church, or comes in your footsteps, and they're holding a gun to try to kill you. You see what I'm saying? There's a time and a place, guys. Time and a place. Time and a place. You have to know what is persecution in the name of Yeshua Jesus and when is there self-defense. And if people are coming to your church or they're putting a gun to somebody else's head and you see that, you're going to sit there and just let them do it? You see somebody just stabbing people, you're going to let them do it? Absolutely not. That's the blood. They're already taking blood. So the blood is, you are free to get rid of them. In fact, that's what the death penalty was originally about in the Bible, to make sure to try to stop that. Now, when we hardly have really capital punishment, that really is a lot of times not even that harsh. People with cannabis or a little bit of drugs get more time than child molesters and murderers and rapists anymore. It's a sad state. It's a sad state. And we see something else though, guys. And I want to tell you this. In 1 Chronicles 28:3, we see, you want to build a house in my name, you shed too much blood. So he wasn't allowing David to build the house because he killed thousands and thousands and thousands in war. And, that's why he said it's going to be in Solomon's hands. And Solomon's hands was to build the temple. And by, does that say, oh, well, does that mean, we can't enter heaven? No, it's not what it means. Listen, he shed a lot of blood and his temple to be pure. And it's, it had nothing to do, yes, Moses, killed somebody, right? But God still used Moses and blessed him. Why? Because his heart was on God and obeying his ways and obeying his laws, and quick to change, quick to surrender to him. His heart was not on the world, it was not on money. It wasn't desiring to kill people, it was not desiring to murder people. And yes, even Moses himself and the people, they killed a lot of people. But you see, Solomon was to build the temple, and he built the temple because he didn't shed a lot of blood. And we shouldn't desire at all, like I said, to shed blood. And that's why there's a lot of people that even want to go to the military, because they're like, oh yeah, I can't wait to kill these people. In America here, I can't wait to slaughter the Muslim scum. I'm like, first of all, like, whoa, man, were you abused when you were a kid? What's going on, brother? Like, what's going on, bro? And, people, you shouldn't want to desire those things. And, David was, in fact, protecting the nation. And that's what you should desire. Protect the nation. Protect the people. And that's what it was about. It was about protecting the nation, protecting people, and protecting God's laws, and protecting who God is, and protecting God's people who follow God. That's what it's about. And, self-defense is just like that. Again, are you going to let somebody walking up in your home and rape your wife or your children? You're going to let somebody walk up in your home and kill your children, your wife or your husband? I mean, think about it. You're going to let somebody just walk up in your church or your synagogue and just kill you? Absolutely not. You're to pick up your weapons and carry one. You are to carry one. Defend yourselves. Protect yourselves. And, again, anybody that says otherwise, they don't know the Word of God. They are following his New Age Jesus that knows no law, knows no Torah, knows no God. It's apostate. It's a new Jesus being spoken. And again, Yeshua Jesus himself wasn't coming to be a warrior. He wasn't coming back to fight. What he was doing is show his mercy and peace and love. He's coming back to bring people to repentance. And why did he not command the Jews to pick up a sword during that time? Because they're in the land of Israel. And if he says, if they don't receive your word, brush the dust off your feet, because they're already ashes. They're already ashes, dust. Like Sodom and Gomorrah, he said it would be more tolerable for Sodom and Gomorrah than it will be for them in the day of judgment. So just go on. So what does that mean? So why did he then say to pick up a sword? If you have money back, buy a sword. And he said, they have two right there. He's like, that's enough, That's enough. He wasn't saying that's enough, don't use that. No, he just told you to buy a sword. He said that'll be sufficient enough. That's good enough right there. You see? Because they're going off into dangerous areas. It doesn't say in the Bible whether they killed anybody or not. I'm sure they did. But yet we see that they were all killed. They were all murdered. And it doesn't matter. You just say, well, don't want to use a sword, we'll die by the sword. Listen, again, that was in that perspective. He would have been dead right there, put to death right there. He was prophesying, Yeshua Jesus was prophesying what would happen if he uses a sword. So don't use a sword, or else you will not, you'll hinder my kingdom. You'll hinder what I have planned for you. Because Peter, I have to use you. Peter, I have to go to the cross. This has to be done so that I can return and that you can be a blessing to the nations. But he says you're going to the pagan nations. You're going to the lawless nations. So pick up a sword and wield one. And, because there's a lot of people that don't know God. And in fact, there's going to be times like, you escape certain places. And again, it's biblical, guys. And, again, I'll say one final thing. If you have hatred in your heart, you have murder in your heart, you have unforgiveness in your heart, you wish, ill will against somebody, you wish harm to come upon somebody, you desire these things and pain and affliction to come upon people, that's wrong. Just like if you say, oh yeah, I desire all child molesters to be put to death, and you go on and take it in your own hands and start killing people, that's not of God. That's of Satan. If you're like, well, didn't they do it in the Bible? You're going way too far there. Anything that was done in the Bible was to try to keep people on the path of God, which was with the Canaanites, to keep people that were basically the most idolatrous, sickening things, having sex with children, and killing babies, sacrificing babies. They were raping and molesting people and having sex with animals. I mean, the most disgusting practices, raping women. Yes, I mean, God is going to come back and deal with these people, so let it be in his hands. But in the same sense, yes, there's going to be governments and ruling authorities that will deal with these things too. But in the same things, don't take it upon yourself and be like, oh, I got to go kill these people. Go kill these people. Oh, I just found this person right here on the child molestation registry, so I'm going to go to his home and kill him. Come on. No, that's not the way to do it. That's supposed to be capital punishment. It's supposed to be judicial, the governments. You are not to take it up in your own hands, otherwise you're plotting murder in your heart. Listen, like I said, if evil comes to you, again, if you're speaking the word of God and somebody slaps you or just wants to make fun of you, mock you, let them persecute you. If somebody wants, oh, you want to be Jewish? Oh, you want to be Jewish? Let them. Oh, you falling after that pagan Jesus? You falling after pagan Jesus because someone's Jewish, raised Jewish, right? And they think you're going after some cult. So even Jews will persecute Jews, and Christians persecute Christians. And both sides persecute each other. So my point is, let them mock you. That's what it means. Somebody slaps you in the left cheek, right cheek, let them do it. But again, if somebody's over here holding a gun to your head, are you going to... Again, there's a time and place for everything. Yes, Paul was stoned, Paul was beat, whipped, but Yeshua, Jesus himself, yes, he didn't fight back, but he fled. He fled. He fled. And you try to escape too. There's a time and a place for everything. And it doesn't say in the Bible whether people killed somebody or not. But we know by the Torah that it's biblical. Where again, we're not to take an eye and an eye and tooth for a tooth. We don't desire to get back at somebody, or, an eye was a price, a tooth was a price. So when you wanted that eye, it was a certain price. You wanted a tooth, that was a certain price. So you had to pay a price financially, compensation to those people. So that's what it's about. And again, we are, again, I say, you can defend yourself, but there's a time for peace, there's a time for war. You don't go looking for it. If it comes in your footsteps, that's the difference. And walk in the Spirit of God. And there's a time somebody might slap you. Your life may be threatened. There's a time and a place for everything. And, defend yourself. It's better for you to live and a life be taken that desires to murder you or somebody else's. And, and that's what the stand your ground law was for, so that you don't retreat. You have a right, but some states are changing that. And it's not for me to speak on, but it was to protect yourself. But in the same way, people abuse that. People seek to kill other people and put people to death. And if we love God, we don't desire to take a life of anybody. In fact, you feel sad for those people because they don't understand the love of God. If you understand the love of God, you're like, wow, I just desire these people to come to repentance and know the love of God, so they'll be broken free from that hatred that they're living in. Again, everybody, shalom, and God bless each one of you. And if you can, live at peace with all people, but don't let anybody tell you it's not right to defend yourself. It's a time and place for everything. Time and place for everything. Again, try to make peace with all people. And, don't worry so much about defending yourself as you are defending others. I can let somebody all day slap me and yell in my face. That's fine. But when it comes to hurting somebody else, again, just because you hear something, a fight, is somebody's abusing somebody that and it doesn't mean you just go kill them. Absolutely not. And, again, like I said, if you're out with your family, somebody comes into your family, tries killing you, you see somebody holding a gun to somebody's head at a store, convenience store, gas station, wherever it might be, you're free to do those things by God's laws. But, I don't know the law of your land. So again, submit to authorities, but obey God. And again, if guns are taken in your country, that's, you know, no harm in that. It's just, but you are, again, it doesn't matter. There's people that murder with a rock. There's people that murder with a sword. There's people that murder with knives and bombs and weapons. But it's going to happen. Bats, golf clubs, these things happen. It's people are going to murder no matter what until Yeshua Jesus comes back, and there'll never be peace. But you don't go in their way. You don't plot evil. You don't plot to kill, and try to live at peace with everybody if you can. And if you can, as Paul says. And shalom, everybody. God bless you.